Hello, this is Noreen Crone-Findlay from Crone-Findlay.com. That's my website, and that's where you'll go to find all kinds of wonderful patterns and books and designs and other things that I've created over the years. So that's my Crone-Findlay.com is my website. Crafts.textiles is my blog. Now, as you can see by my sign today, I'm going to show you how to shape hand-woven fabrics by pulling on the warp strands. Now, warp strands are the lengthwise, they're the skeleton of your weaving. They go from the cloth beam at the front to the warp beam at the back, and they are what you will be building your fabric on. And you can use them in all kinds of neat ways. Of course, they can, here you can see this is a band of inkle weaving. Here they are the fringe of the inkle weaving, but they're going to become something else in a moment. I'm going to show you some pulled warp strand pieces. Now, when you're pulling warp strands, this is a tapestry. This is one of my woven women tapestries, and they're fabric collages from different pieces of weaving that I then combine to put together to create the woven woman. And you can see the top of her halo is gathered. Now, to gather that, I could have taken a needle and thread and gone in and out of the band and pulled on that to gather it. That works great. That's one way of gathering, but that's not what I did. What I did was I pulled the warp strand to pull up this edge to make this edge shorter than this edge, which then automatically gives me that beautiful gathering. So here I was really ferocious about pulling up the warp strand along the edge to get lots of gathering. Now at the lower edge, I'm going to turn her around so you can see at the lower edge I've also pulled up the warp strands, but just softly to give myself a curve. So if you pull up really hard, then you'll get a ruffle. If you pull up softly, you'll get a curve, which is really handy if you're shaping garments. Now, I'm going to show you how I put the ruffle onto the lower edge of this shrug was to pull the warp strands along this edge. You can see I've zigzagged on a couple of times to secure it. I pulled up on the warp strands. Oh, they've all been trimmed now. I pulled up quite energetically to get a fair amount of ruffling to happen for putting the ruffle on the lower edge of the shrug. But for the cuff, I didn't pull up as intensely, just to make a slight gather. To make this tunic, which is what I'm going to show you today, one of the wonderful things about using your warp strands to shape and gather your weaving is that you can make a softly graduated curve like the yoke of this tunic. Now, if you go to Tawty Talks Crafts, I'll post photographs of the tunic so that you can see the full size of the tunic. And what I'm going to show you now is exactly how you pull the warp strands to get the shape of whatever shape you want, whether it's a softly graduated curve like this yoke or a full gather like the top of this tapestry, and I'll put photographs of her up there as well. You can see her face. Hopefully I'm holding this in the right place. Her face and the center of her body I did on a small loom using tapestry techniques, and the outside bands, these are woven, and this is was woven on a 4-harness loom. Okay, now I'm going to show you how to get a graduated curve. So I want the ends of my band to be at the back of the tunic. So what I'll do is I'll start from the back, and I'm going to use this tunic because it fits really well as my template for doing the warp strand pulling. Now I'm going to start at the very edge of the woven band, and I will select a couple of strands of warp, and you can see how easy it is. I'm just holding on to the warp and I'm just easing it along to gather it. Now this is going to be the inside of the curve of the yoke, so it's going to be pulled up quite vigorously. And I think what I'll do is I don't think I'll pull all the way with just the one end. I think I will start pulling at this end so that the gathering will kind of meet in the front of the middle. The middle of the front? That's more what I wanted to be saying. Yes. Okay, so I'm pulling, pull, and ease it along with your hands. So you're going to start holding your warp strand and easing that away from you. Now, then you can, with your non-dominant hand, you can pinch, and with your dominant hand, ease along, and then ease up some more, pinch, ease, 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 and you keep easing your curve along till you get the amount of gathering that you'd like. And then I know I'm going to need several strands to be pulled up in order to make a flattened graduated curve. That's the advantage of pulling on your warp strands, because you can move a few warp strands over and start pulling another warp strand. And as you do that, you're drawing the shape of the weaving in, and you're shaping the weaving itself rather than just simply gathering it, so that you will end up with a flattened curve, because this edge is going to want to pull, kind of curl up on itself, and you don't really want that. So you have to mitigate that by doing enough pulling of warp strands that it really pulls in your center curve and flattens it out, rather than, because this one we want it to be a yoke, we don't want it being ruffled, we want it to lie flat. Well, at least I do. Using the weaverly wee there. Okay, so you can see it's getting curvaceous. Let's take another warp strand, a couple of strands over, and pull on it. And inkle weaving is warp faced, so it can interfere with the pattern somewhat if you have an intricate pattern and you're pulling your warp up on a piece of patterned inkle weaving. But it didn't, in this strand you can see it's been pulled, but I sort of ruffled it a bit and didn't worry too much. You can see here's where I pulled the center one, and it definitely does interfere with the pattern there. Along the edges it's not too bad. And with this one I just I didn't want to interfere too much with the patterning, so I kept the warp strands to the very edge so you can see where the pulled ones are. With a piece of plain weaving like this one, or the stripes in this yoke, it's okay if you can see that these I pulled mostly in the colored areas, not the lighter areas. So yeah, the warp pulling does interfere somewhat with the pattern, but in a way it will give it its own pattern too. So there you have it, how to pull warp strands to make yourself either some ruffled weaving or some flat curved pieces for yokes. And it's a bit like watching paint dry to watch me doing this, but I will just do one more and then we'll call it a video. And I will post the photographs of the piece, of the various pieces, onto my blog so you can see them. And as you can see, as I'm working the curves, I start to hold them down on a flat surface to ease those curves in. Now I'm going to have quite a bit more pulling to get my curve to flatten out completely. So I'm going to keep on tugging on these warp strands, and when I get the tunic stitched up that I'm using this piece on, I will post photographs of it to my blog. And until then, keep weaving, keep playing with yarn and your threads, go gently, and happy weaving. From Noreen Crone-Findlay. See you again soon. Bye for now.